Welcome to this session. So, we will continue from where we stopped in the last session. We look at the key factors for success. So, if you go back, we in the last class we looked at the generic strategies, then the type of marketing warfare, then the Porter's model of value chain. Now, one of the important points coming out of this was the risks connected with the generic competitive strategies, then how quality dimensions affect these strategies. Then we look at the key factors for success. This was given by a Japanese gentleman by name Kenichi Ome. So, how did he really go about it? If you really see, a key success factor is a competitive skill or asset that is particularly relevant to the industry. To play in the game, a competitor will usually need to have some minimum level of skill or asset with respect to each of the industry's key success factors. If a firm has a strategic weakness in a key success factor and it is not neutralized by a well conceived strategy, the firm's ability to compete will be weak. Kindly note all these points, these are all very important. Conversely, sustainable competitive advantages usually will be based on key success factors. In general, the successful firm will have strengths in the key success areas and unsuccessful competitor will lack one or more of them. So, this is the way you look at KFS with respect to an industry or an organization, and it is very important to remain in the business. Okay. So, you should have the KFS to remain in contention in business, otherwise you will be marginalized, you will become a marginalized player. So, such things are happening on a very routine basis in the LPG era. Today you may be seeing some new companies coming up, and all of a sudden within a few months those companies disappear from the marketplace. That means they are not able to withstand the pressures of competition even for that short period. If you look at the COVID-19, the industries which got hit terribly were the medium and small scale industries, what we refer to as MSMEs. So, if you take the city of Bangalore itself, nearly 50% of the MSMEs were closed during the COVID-19 outbreak period. The situation was really very grave for them, not able to really keep their head afloat in the market, terrific working capital problems and terrific market sales problems with respect to their product. And if sales had been done by an MSME, then the sales realization by the MSME, that itself was proving to be a problem. You had so many people who were owing payment to these MSMEs, but they had lifted the product. So, this is a type of scenario which you will find yourself in if you find when some of the environmental variables are not under your control. So, these key success factors is explained by this table. Look at this table, there is the first column here is key success factor, the second is to increase profits, the third is to gain market share. Now, I will go through this table, I will give you some examples for this, that examples are also listed here. To increase profits in a gold mining or a wine making industry, the key success factor is raw material procurement. No better example than that of the KGF in Karnataka, Kolar gold fields. Some decades back, the Kolar gold fields was really a gold mine, but then the gold reserves started depleting. So, in fact, the story goes that many of the workers in KGF every day used to walk away with a few grams of gold, almost getting unchecked. That was so, some of the people, if you talk to the local people, they say these laborers have become so rich that they do not need to work. Okay. So, that also happened with respect to KGF, but the main point that was coming in was the reserves of gold started depleting. When you find that the gold reserves, that is the main raw material, if it starts depleting, then you are weak in that key success area. So, you do not have the raw material. To gain market share for a sugar industry or a petroleum industry also, you should have good raw material procurement. So, that is where you see most of these oil producing countries are dictating terms to other countries. Now, if you see the present situation, the war between Russia and Ukraine, it has made the fuel prices to skyrocket in most of the countries. So, many of the countries are really reeling under this impact of this fueling rising fuel prices, and their economy has nosedived. Example is that of our neighbors only, you name it as Nepal or Sri Lanka, all these countries are having problems. Our country is also having problem, but still we are able to maintain a steady petroleum flow to the consumer. That is because of the present strong leadership the country has. So, you do not find stock out boards in front of petrol bunks. Then come to raw material processing. This becomes very important for steel and paper industry, both to increase profits and to gain market share. So, this reminds me of the story of Bhadravati Iron and Steel in Karnataka. And when Sir M.V. went to visit this Bhadravati Iron and Steel, he suggested to them to go in for a different grade of steel making at that point of time. So, it was Bhadravati Iron and Steel Company then, and at that point of time even a company like Tata Steel was interested in taking over this Bhadravati Iron and Steel. So also was the Steel Authority of India. Now, because this Bhadravati Iron and Steel did not pay enough attention to Sir M.V.'s wise words at that point of time only, they had to literally cringe before sale to take them over. So, now it is known as Vishveshwaraya Iron and Steel Company. So, if this is what happens when you make some wrong strategic decisions or when you do not make good strategic decisions. So, if and this is where Bhadravati Iron and Steel was found wanting. It could have dictated the terms of merger had it listened to Sir M.V. at that point of time only. Now, take the third point on production fabrication. So, this is for the integrated circuits and the tire industry, this can help increase profits and gain market share. Again an example coming from the Mysore belt with respect to Karnataka. So, the semiconductor industry, the semiconductor factory, production factory was to start several, in fact, more than 10 to 15 years back only near Mysore. If it had really started, then the electronics industry and the computer industry would have greatly benefited by all these chips manufactured from here only. So, if now what is happening, an Israel company, an Israeli investment of more than 22,000 crores, that company is pumping in to manufacture semiconductors near Mysore. So, they expect more than 10,000 jobs to be created in that sector there. So, then when you come to assembly, this is very important for an instrumentation industry, and to increase profits it is very important for an apparel industry. When you think of design, it is very important for a heavy engineering industry. When you look at distribution as a key success factor, it is very important for bottled water or metal cans. Then to gain market share for home appliances, cement industry. Marketing becomes a key success factor for branded cosmetics and liquor. So, this branding is very important for both these industries, cosmetics and liquor. So, many times you find some of the perfumes by well known brands are very costly, and at the time of launching this brand they give you an offer at half the rate, that 50% of the original rate you can take for one day. So, in fact, on that day there will be a huge rush So, I was in one of these types of perfume launches by a well known company brand by name Chanel in the US when this happened, and I was just a witness, but did not buy. Okay. So, the service key success factor is very important for an automobile industry. Why? You take an example of the automobile industry in India. Honda City is a very good car. Why it is a very good car? You may just ask the question. The most important crucial element in that car is its engine. Many say that it is the world's best engine with respect to petrol. You can't find a better engine than that. Okay. Now, suppose you look at the service of Honda City in a city like Bangalore, it is found wanting. Okay. You find after service so many hiccups, and when you have so many hiccups, so especially in a city like Bangalore in the present day, when you have traffic jams galore, then it is a very serious problem. Okay. So, where do you catch these fellows? So, every time you have to keep on ringing, and ringing them also is a big issue when you are caught in a traffic jam. So, the service becomes very important in an automobile industry to increase profits. Similarly, to gain market share in a hotel industry. So, how do you really cater to your clientele? This becomes very important. So, these key factors for success, this table in fact was given by this Japanese gentleman, as I said, Kenichi Ome. Now, let us look at some of the formats given for internal analysis, that is the strengths and weaknesses profile. One of the formats was given by Bates and Eldridge. They looked at three areas: management, operations and finance. Then there was a grid approach suggested by Ansoff. They looked at the 7S matrix and took all the functional areas: marketing, finance, human resources and production. Now, why do you want to do all this? This is nothing but doing or looking at the corporate audit of a company, taking stock of a company internally. So, when you do a corporate audit, what is it that you do? You should ask questions both within and outside. Should not be a mere spectator, but you should ask sensible questions, not like the debating which goes on in TV channels. Okay. So, many times waste of time. Okay. So, this is what the audit team expects. Ask questions within and outside, and then they do the observation and examine records. So, they keep on asking you, why did you do this, why did you do that, could it not have been done this way, and you should also ask them questions, where it is wrong, tell us. Okay. So, you should not allow the audit team to have a what do you call simply walkover with all his questions only. From your side also you should have questions. Now, why do you do all this? You do all this to match the strengths and weaknesses for competitive advantage. So, the concept of synergy could be helpful. What is this concept of synergy? We tend to think that 1 plus 1 should always be equal to 2 only, but the concept of synergy says your 1 plus 1 need not be just 2, it can be more than 2, it can be 3 also. So, this is what is required in the management field with respect to an industry. So, this gives you or this brings you to one important model. This is called the Porter's model of industry competition. So, this model is again taken from his book on competitive strategy, the Michael Porter, wherein he gives this model for industry competition under 5 blocks. Kindly note that these are 5 blocks which are there. The first block is the industry competitors' degree of rivalry. Note these things, this is very important model, wherein when he looks at the degree of rivalry, he says the number of competitors, the industry growth, asset intensity, product differentiation, exit barrier. So, if you go back to some of our previous sessions, it is the industry and the market structure which really defines all this. Suppose you are having perfect competition. Also note that there is nothing like a complete perfect competition possible in any industry, but you can be very close to perfect competition. Though 100% you may not have perfect competition, but you can be close to that. So, when you are in that type of an industry, the number of competitors will be quite a large number, okay, all are producing the same thing. I gave the example of a rice item. Okay. So, the industry growth in that, when you have this perfect competition, it is very possible that all these players are growing. Okay. So, the same example. So, if you see the sellers of rice are too many, the buyers of rice are also more than adequate. So, all the sellers are also profiting, the buyers are also perhaps pleased with the type of product they are getting. Then the asset intensity, what do you mean by asset intensity? So, what the industry has created as asset, okay. So, it can be with reference to anything, in the end it can be with reference to your reserve asset creation also. So, a company like Infosys, the reserves created are such that it does not have to look for additional resources or financial props when they take up decisions on M&As both within the country and abroad. So, Infosys has bought so many companies abroad also. Similarly, the Tatas. So, this asset intensity, the creation of this asset intensity is the characteristic of some of these firms. The reserve position has been so good. Then the second block for this, the last 2 points which we have already discussed is the product differentiation. Product differentiation coming under the generic categories. The exit barriers we have discussed in fairly good detail with respect to competition, whether it is a perfect competition or whether it is an oligopoly or whether it is a monopoly, all those types of things. Okay. Suppose you look at the second block that looks at potential entrants. This potential entrants looks at economies of scale. What is this economies of scale? Suppose you get an order and that order is very small, let us say, so many units only. Then should you accept that order or not that order? That becomes the question mark. Suppose it is a very high value order, then instead of looking at the economies of scale, you look at what is called the economies of scope, which come into the picture, where the order quantity level can be less, but still the economies of scope will help you to make profits. Okay. Then the absolute cost advantage, this is what we just discussed in with respect to the generic strategies also. Then the third one is brand identity. So, this is what helps in the marketplace. This is what is called the value of a brand. So, for a simple item like salt, the brand of Tata's is making a big difference, the Tata salt. Then access to distribution. So, this is where you have an edge over your competitors. So, how can your product reach the different corners of the country? So, you may be a good two-wheeler manufacturer. It was happening to a well-known company from the south only. So, the product of this company, some years back, there was difficulty in accessing this product, especially in the northeast regions. Okay. Though a very good product. So, though so many of them wanted to buy that two-wheeler, but access was a problem. Then the switching costs. What do you mean by switching costs? You are with respect to one manufacturer, you want to switch from one manufacturer to other manufacturer, then there is a cost that is involved. Okay. Then coming into this whole spectrum is the government policy. How does the government policy affect or support all these things? This is the second block. Now, the first block and the second block are connected, and what is mentioned there is the threat of new entrants. So, suppose a new entrant comes into the market and the new entrant is very strong, let us say, and it is an if it is an oligopolistic market, then it is very probable that he will tilt the market scale very fast. Okay. So, these things are to be expected in a market. Okay. So, there is no point in running away from that whole this thing. So, when this brings you, there was in the earlier sessions I said with respect to warfare, there can be a flanking warfare also in marketing. So, how did this flanking warfare come in, this term come in? If you look at it, it is not something which was unknown. It was right there in the Mahabharat war only. Okay. So, what is it? So, if you look at the war, Abhimanyu is killed. Okay. When Abhimanyu is killed, Abhimanyu's father takes a vow. The person who was responsible for Abhimanyu's death was Jayadratha. Who was Jayadratha? Jayadratha was none other than the brother-in-law of Duryodhana. He stopped the Pandava army from entering. Only Abhimanyu could enter the Chakravyuha, and he got killed in that Chakravyuha. So, and that was also one of the promises made by Drona to Duryodhana. Suppose you are able to take Arjuna out of the battlefield, then one of the Atirathas from the Pandava side will be killed tomorrow. I will ensure that. So, unfortunately, it happened to be Abhimanyu. Okay. So, now what is now for this woe? What does the woe mean? The woe is of Arjuna, that he will kill Jayadratha on the next day before the sun sets. And what really happens in that whole this thing? He is stopped by none other than Drona the next day. Drona tells Arjuna, Arjuna, fight with me before finding out where Jayadratha is. And Drona is the, what do you call, the teacher to both the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and Arjuna is one of his very favorite students also. So, then what does Krishna do at this point of time? So, this fight between Drona and Arjuna goes on for about half an hour. When it goes on for about half an hour, Krishna tells Arjuna, look, the rate at which you are fighting Drona, it looks as though sun will set here only. You will not be able to defeat Drona. So, then Arjuna asks Krishna, Drona is asking me to fight, you are telling me not to fight Drona. What should be done? So, Krishna tells Arjuna, you be standing and I will take the chariot, flank the chariot of Drona. So, do not throw any arrows or fight him with any arrows. You take 2 arrows and those 2 arrows should fall right at the feet of Drona. And when they are falling at the feet of Drona, I will flank the chariot of Drona and enter the Kauravas this thing. So, he is able. So, so immediately Arjuna catches the message and 2 arrows go and fall at the feet of Drona. And Drona asks Arjuna, what are you doing, Arjuna? Then Arjuna replies him, what is that? Acharya, you are not my enemy. I am trying to find out the person who killed my son. There is no enmity between me and you. I am offering my respects to you. And immediately the chariot of Krishna, the Arjuna's chariot, the charioteer, Krishna just flanks Drona's chariot and goes into the vyuha of the Kauravas. So, this is what is called the flanking warfare. This flanking warfare came into the marketing field also. Suppose you find that the leader is very strong, do not take on the leader. So, you flank him. So, he is very strong in a particular product segment or something like that. You create your own niche segment where he is not so strong. Then the third block in this is what is called the substitutes. This is, it can be with respect to functional similarity, price and performance trend, or the product identity. Functional similarity can be with respect to attributes, price and performance trends can be with respect to what the market is dictating at that point of time, and the product identity is with respect to the product we are putting out in the market. Then the fourth and the fifth blocks, this block is connected to the first block by one more link. This is called the threat of substitute products or services. Suppose you are in a market, you should always keep your eyes and ears open to the substitute products which may come in. So, even for a very small player which is in the what you call eatables market, he should also be looking for substitutes. So, there are so many players selling so many eatables in the marketplace today. So, this is many times they call it kuruk tindi in the whole in parlance, especially in Bangalore. So, whether it is your Tengol or Murk or whatever. So, these things are keeping on coming, so many players doing that. There are players from Udupi, there are players from Mangalore, but in spite of all these players, some players have held on to their market positions even in this segment. So, that is what I was trying to mention 1 or 2 sessions back when I said a small store in Gandhi Bazaar in Bangalore, his eatables are finding way to US also. So, they want to take this particular store's eatables, especially his hurigol, what we call that here, to US. So, the fourth block is on the suppliers. The suppliers, you have supplier concentration, number of buyers, switching costs, substitute raw materials, and threat of forward integration. Threat of forward integration meaning your delivery line. Okay. So, this link between the suppliers and the first block is the bargaining power of the suppliers. Suppose you are the person, you are the industry, and these suppliers are supplying so many things for you, can be from raw materials to so many these things. So, they naturally have some weight over the industry functioning itself. So, they have a power. So, sometimes they can scuttle the industries also functioning. So, this is also happening in so many industry sectors. So, the latest that you are hearing, what is it? There is a power crisis in the national capital itself. So, there is a lot of hue and cry that coal is in shortage. Where is this coal to come from? The coal is to come from Coal India. And where is the, if you want the coal to come from Coal India, you have to pay the money to Coal India, otherwise Coal India will get knocked off from the marketplace. Okay. So, most of the state governments owe a lot of money to Coal India, and they also clamor, oh, coal is in shortage. So, this is also being touted as many of the economists who are discussing this say, this is the aftermath of giving freebies. Okay. So, you give so many units free of power. So, all this is likely to result in these types of consequences. So, this is one, this is what is getting reported in the present day's press right now. Now, the fifth block is with respect to buyers. The same elements with respect to suppliers are coming in, that is a buyer instead of the supplier you are having buyer concentration, number of suppliers, switching costs, substitute products and the threat of backward integration. So, instead of the forward integration here you have the backward integration with respect to the buyers. So, what is really dictating to the industry? It is the bargaining power of the consumer. Suppose you have a very powerful consumer block, he can dictate to you because he may be lifting a very strong portion, a considerable portion of your finished product, and when he is taking out a considerable percentage of your finished product, then naturally he has to be looked at from a different yardstick. You can't apply the same yardstick to him. This is what is called the Pareto's law. So, you have the A category, though they may be small, they may be contributing to the lifting of the product of the company as a whole. So, they may be lifting nearly 100% of your product. So, when they are lifting 100% of your product, you better concentrate on their needs, try to satisfy them to the maximum extent that is possible. So, this block, that is the fifth block, is linked to the first block through this bargaining power of the consumers. The fourth block of the suppliers is linked to the first block through the bargaining power of the suppliers. All this is forming what is called the Porter's model of industry competition. Suppose you go to my book on strategic management, come to chapter number 6. So, we looked at Microsoft as in the hyper competition industry there. Then we looked at the external factors analysis summary there. Then when you come to chapter 7, you are looking at internal corporate analysis or the IFAS as we call it. So, in the IFAS this thing, if you go to page number 100 and 101, it gives you the strength and weaknesses profile, then the grid for corporate audit, then the 7S framework. This also gives you the value chain analysis on page number 105, that is the Porter's model. Then when you look at it also gives you so many other things with respect to functional resources scanning and all that. Then if you look at page number 108, it gives you an exhibit taking the example of ABB, that is Asia Brown Boveri, how corporate culture could be used as competitive advantage. So, this is happening right now in the middle. So, ABB's corporate culture is used as a strategic advantage in the whole setup. So, we will stop here and we will continue in the next session. Thank you.